MBTI, or the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator, is a tool for measuring your own personality based on a questionnaire. It will type you based on whether you are an introvert or extrovert, a sensor or intuitive, a thinker or feeler, and a judger or perceiver. This results in having letters like ESFP or INFJ attributed to your personality type. It can be quite a controversial topic, as at the two different ends of the spectrum, we have people who will swear by it and rely on it to explain everything, and on the other end, we have people who think it is all complete nonsense and has no factual evidence to back it up. I tend to lie somewhere in the middle. I don't see it as a know-all measure of someone's personality or character, but I think it can be used to help better understand certain aspects of our personality. It's a part of psychology, which is not a hard science and cannot always provide facts to back up all of its theories, so it is always worth taking it with a pinch of salt to see whether you agree with them or not. In this video, I wanted to look at how MBTI can be useful, and also how it can be not quite so useful. Firstly, MBTI can be useful to find out what your general strengths and weaknesses are regarding your personality type. Knowing that I am an introvert means I will find it more difficult to be centre of attention or surrounded by lots of people, and it shows me that this is one area I will need to work hard on if I want to become good at it. Knowing that I am intuitive means I will be happy throwing around random concepts and ideas, and not always be so worried about hard facts. Being a judger means I will prefer order and structure a bit more. I like to plan rather than just be spontaneous. The thinking and feeling part of MBTI was always a little confusing for me though, because I don't massively prefer values over logic. Just using MBTI alone, I thought I was both an INFJ and an INTJ, because I can switch between feeling and thinking depending on the situation I am in. It wasn't until I learned about the cognitive functions, and that everybody has both a thinking and a feeling function, that I realised why I can switch so easily. I use my FE, extroverted feeling function, a bit more, but my TI, introverted thinking function, is something I'm also good at using, so I use it quite a lot too. So by itself, I can gain a reasonable amount of information about my personality with MBTI, but there are definitely a lot of questions when I'm only typed as an introvert, intuitive, feeler and judger. It comes across that it is black and white, so that I am only an introvert, I can't be extroverted. I'm only intuitive, so I'm rubbish at anything sensing, whereas MBTI in combination with the cognitive functions, for example, shows us that all of us have all of the parts, and can therefore use, for example, intuition and sensing, not one or the other. We do, however, have a preference, much like anyone can write with both their left and their right hand if they practice enough, but one of them is more dominant and thus more natural for us to use. Secondly, MBTI can be useful to find other similar and like-minded people. Knowing that my type is rare means it is unlikely I will find anyone else who is also an INFJ in my daily life, but I can go online to find other YouTube videos of INFJs, Reddit threads about them, and other sites that can provide a sort of community. But this does also lead to the many stereotypes about each type, some of which I've done videos on, because it is assumed, for example, that all judgers only plan everything, and all perceivers are spontaneous all the time, just like all extroverts must absolutely love people all the time, and introverts probably hate them all. Like I mentioned previously about it coming across as only black or white, so that means that people only look at MBTI or put an ENFJ, who may be quite happy with going along with the flow so long as the group is happy, in the same box as an ISTJ, who may like to structure their day out by the hour to make sure they're the most productive. It also doesn't account for the days when judgers may just want to take a break and have some fun outside of their normal organised life, or when a perceiver may decide that they need a structure to their day so they can actually get all of their work done on time. People aren't ever just one or the other. There are lots of shades of grey, and we do grow and change throughout our lives. So the box we used to fit in 5 years ago is probably the complete wrong shape now. Thirdly, it is a good first step to realise that we are all different, that we do have different personalities, and that they shape the way we look at things and how we can behave. It helps people to realise that not everybody thinks like they do. Maybe they are a sensor, and they're talking with an intuitive who will see the world through completely different eyes to the way they do. And that is not actually a bad thing. Just like why I could never connect with most of the people at school, I now understand that most of them are probably sensors, so they think differently to how I do. It is a wonderful thing that we are all so different. We get to talk to people and find out how their minds work, what the similarities and differences are between us, and I think that's fascinating. But then I love psychology, so I would. However, The MBTI personalities sometimes end up being used as an excuse or a scapegoat for certain behaviours, justifying the rudeness because you're a thinker, not a feeling, or deciding that you don't want to go anywhere near people because you're an introvert and thus hate everybody. And this doesn't help anyone. It just makes people close-minded and happy to stay stuck in their old ways, rather than developing a growth mindset, identifying the areas that you may struggle with and working on those. Or it could lead to people just dismissing the MBTI theory and anything associated with it altogether, because they don't think they struggle with something it says they do. Again, understand that this is only one part. There are the cognitive functions, Enneagram, and so many different tests and parts that people have come up with to help us understand ourselves. So don't just take the 4 letters and run with them or away from them. Do some more research, because you may find you've been mistyped because your personality isn't as black and white as the test makes out. Or you have really had to work on a part of your personality, so you are good at it now, but it didn't come naturally to you in the beginning. And finally, it is a fairly simple explanation of personality, which makes it a good starting block for people who want to know more about themselves and others. It isn't too complex, and it won't confuse people as much as if they just jumped straight into looking at masculine and feminine cognitive functions and the animals. But it does provide more information than just saying someone is an extrovert or an introvert, and thinking that that means either they love people or they hate people. But it is definitely not a be-all and end-all. It doesn't answer everything, and it doesn't show the differences between how a dominant intuitive and a secondary intuitive will use their intuition, and the same with all the other parts. Some perceivers still like an element of structure to their day, and some absolutely hate it. Some thinkers only care about logic and nothing else, whereas others have a slight preference, but they can still appreciate values and feelings too. And it definitely doesn't account for why people of the same type can still be very different. It has more of a leaning towards nature, i.e. the personality you were born with, but it doesn't really take into account nurture, i.e. your upbringing, environment, and how you've developed your personality as you grow and learn in life. So overall, MBTI is definitely a useful tool to begin your journey of discovering more about yourself and others, but it should not be where your journey ends. You need the cognitive functions alongside MBTI, or it won't properly make any sense. And that is probably why so many people are mistyped, why INFJs can seem so common, when in fact most of them are actually typed wrong. Also, the Enneagram can be helpful. It isn't something I've looked into very much, but I may do in the future. And if you really want to challenge yourself, then you can try looking at the masculine and feminine functions, and the animals that Objective Personality came up with, as that can provide even more insight. I may do a video on those as well at some point. I think I've pretty much grasped them. So, use MBTI as a starting block, but if you really want to learn about personalities, we're going to be using this information you have gathered from the tests for absolutely anything, whether that's in a job, explaining things to your friends and family differently, maybe even treating them slightly differently, or whatever. If you're going to be using this knowledge at all, please do some more research and at least start looking at the cognitive functions. I have a video outlining the functions and I will link that below. Thank you for your time.